Greetings! As many of you already know, Update 3.0 Operation Overhaul has been in development for almost 2 years, and it affects the entire BattleBit Remastered experience, including graphical changes of course, and there are a lot of them. Let's review the history and analyze the game's graphical changes, and a little bit of their impact on performance. Initially, the update wasn't supposed to include any graphical changes, as they would have taken up additional development time. As far as I remember, the developers only talked about graphical changes in the future updates only, and even then, unlikely. Overall, this was reasonable and obvious. Why wasting time updating graphics in a game that suffers from more pressing issues? But this didn't stop the developers from changing models and textures, because sooner or later they would have to be replaced. But the game never went beyond that, not counting the changes to various animations in the game of course. This continued until the release of 29th devcast in the early summer 2024. There, the developers went all in. They changed explosion effects, improved weapon sway, added exposure, chromatic aberration, dirty lens and the long-awaited ambient occlusion, which they couldn't add previously due to depth buffer limitations. Ultimately, Oki fixed everything and added the aforementioned effects. Honestly, I know pretty much nothing about the depth buffers, so I can't get into that more. Then Velasquez creates a system that changes with the conditions and time of the day and maps depending on the match, and after a while he shares new 3D skyboxes with us. And after that, absolutely nothing on a graphical part of the game. Yes, textures and models were changing, new maps were under rework, and new skyboxes were adding, but that's pretty much it. That is, until Terminal showed us this screenshot almost a year later. On it, you won't believe it, we see a night version of Sandy Sunset, and most importantly, lights on the buildings. The community started speculating that lights would be added on the night maps, and it turned out to be true. The Unity engine, European one, has a limit of a maximum 8 light sources that can light on a single object. Because of this, the developers couldn't add lights to the night maps at all, as it would have required rewriting the engine's rendering pipeline, which would have taken up another additional development time. And it seems like they realized that the update was already taking a long time to complete, so they could delay it even longer. And as you have already figured out, yes, they completely reworked the game's rendering. This gave them a lot of room to improve the visuals. And a funny detail, Velasquez previously said that there is no electricity in the game because, according to the BattleBit lore, it disappeared due to intense combat. Apparently, the already non-existent lore of the BattleBit will be rewritten again. So, after the rendering changes, they added some beautiful fog along with the wires on the poles. Whatever anyone says, it adds immersion to the game. And finally, the moment of truth arrives. On October 4th of this year, they're sharing their progress on the game's graphics. And oh my, how the game has changed! The first screenshot showed us improved shadows and god rays. At first glance, everything seems very beautiful, but everything immediately breaks down when we see the contrast between the sun and the shadows. In real life, sun rays bounce off the surfaces of objects several times. Game developers realized this pretty long time ago and created a technology called global illumination. It creates invisible rays emanating from light sources that bounce off objects multiple times, causing their colors to overlap, making shadows softer and the image brighter and more realistic. BattleBit obviously doesn't have this, because this technology has a significant impact on performance. And in this screenshot we can clearly see that this technology is lacking. The shadows are very dark, while the light is very bright. This seriously impacts immersion and the visibility of objects on the map. I pointed out to the developers that this is a problem and it should be fixed. To which Velasquez responded, players will have glow sticks, so they will be visible. Wow, a brilliant fix. All they need to do is reduce the opacity of the shadows themselves. I made a small adjustment in Photoshop and the picture already looks better. And well, Jilgas responded to my feedback and said that they are working on setting up a good balance between a contrast and visibility, so should be no problems here. The next screenshot shows a reworked river map, I believe. And this atmospheric fog that we have seen already. This isn't a volumetric fog effect though, as you might think, but a handcrafted fog shadow instead, created with the same depth and shadow masks, which has a much smaller impact on the performance. God rays. This is also a very atmospheric effect, which was also recreated using masks. Everything looks very attractive and that's all I can say. You can see here that the sun is truly bright, and the objects that should emit light have a bloom effect applied to them, but the light itself doesn't come from them, because it's daytime. In the distance, we can also see a strange blue fog. It's very noticeable because it's blue. I don't know, they could have made it more yellowish to fit into the scene. Deep shadows and ambient occlusion. I've already told you about ambient occlusion, but deep shadows are something new. I read some information about it and didn't really understand anything, but roughly speaking, on this staircase we can see a more shadowed area of the image than anywhere else. And this is deep shadows basically. The area in the stairwell is narrower, less light falls there, so the shadows should be deeper. In the first screenshot we can see the same effect, but on the light bulb instead. Here we can also see rays of sunlight coming from the open windows behind this pillar. They also changed the texture of the destructible walls for some reason. Instead of the usual bricks, they have made them concrete as I understood, which looks better, but now how do I know which walls are destructible and which are not? Shadows and draw distance have also been upgraded. Okay, draw distance, but shadows. The current build of BattleBit is seriously lacking of a larger shadow range. It's really cool that they are now rendering across the entire map, it's a truly significant improvement. Optimization and conditions. The developers wanted to force all BattleBit players to have the same graphics as they showed us. This means all the above mentioned effects can't be disabled, and you can only cry about it. This was done to eliminate or at least minimize the disadvantage between low-end and high-end PCs, and this isn't the first time that developers have done this. About a year ago, they removed the ability to disable shadows in the update for the same reason. Anyway, the community started complaining about the forced graphics, saying that enemies wouldn't be visible and optimization would suck. These are very valid arguments, of course, but at worst, everyone wouldn't see enemies, and the optimization, according to the developers, is excellent, as most of the effects they demonstrated were recreated using death masks, which are not eating up the resources that much. I don't particularly trust them on this part, as it's highly doubtful that such graphics will even manage 60 FPS on low-end PCs. But Larry argues otherwise, saying that his old laptop without a graphic card is stable with frames per second. Well, we will see in the playtests. Regarding the BattleBit departure from the unturned style, I am only happy this to happen, because now the game is turning into something more unique and distinctive. Battlefield in Roblox isn't exactly a good place for BattleBit, as its gameplay isn't even close to any other Roblox places. So now we can proudly call BattleBit Remastered cubes with shaders. Well, that's pretty much it. The screenshots you see we already discussed in the previous video, link down below. Overall, I'm really excited to get my hands on all of this update. The developers upgraded the graphics a lot, and it looks like the optimization will be appropriate. Visuals are not looking too realistic nor too cartoonish. Everything is surprisingly balanced, and somewhere there is a noticeable leaning towards stylization rather than realism even, which I definitely like. If you enjoyed this video, then please subscribe to the channel, it means a lot. Don't forget to leave a comment, and as always, I read them all. See ya!